Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. My name is Connor Williams with Jay Motti from Stretford Paddock, and this is Player Insight on Hannibal. First of all, Jay, welcome to the channel, mate. Been a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, always love coming on your channel, chatting to you lads. I think there's always a little bit of a mutual respect out of the fact that my enemy's enemy is my friend.
Dan, there's been a lot of players that have gone either way, hasn't there, over the years?
Yeah, there has. I think, crikey, obviously, Rooney, Fellaini, John O'Kane. If you want to start getting Phil Neville. Yeah, we've always done a little bit of business between us, and obviously, I know you want to get into that today.
Yeah, well, first of all, tell us a bit more about Hannibal, sort of how old he is, what position, just a bit more about him as you just mentioned before off camera about him as a person as well. Just tell us a little bit more about him.
Well, he's a player that I've been sort of watching for a couple of years now. I think he's 20 now. I've been watching him since he was in the under 18s, and he is a talent. There's no denying that. He's a player that he's good on the ball. He's strong. He can run with the ball. He's got a decent pass on him as well and a decent shot. He scored a goal in the Premier League against Brighton. If you remember, he came on. I was at the game and he came on and he scored. But he's a live wire, and he's one of those players who he's just, for me, he's got the makings of a sort of a cult hero or fan's favourite. I watched him in the under 23s a couple of years, probably about 2 years ago now. And this sums up Hannibal Mejbri for me. In the first, I think it was the first half, he scored an absolute screamer of a goal, top bins, quality goal, just standing out, stood out in the game. You're looking at him, you think he's got that bit of magic. The second half, right, and I swear to God, yeah, he's the only player I've ever seen do this, ever. In all my years watching football, like yourself, been watching football for years. He got 2 yellows for waving a yellow card. So he's waving an imaginary yellow card and he gets a yellow and then he carries on doing it and he calls over the player to give him this yellow card, this imaginary yellow card. So he gets a red card. He got sent off. And that just sums him up. He's very sort of erratic, shall we say. He's a little bit, he can be a little bit temperamental. He's got that sort of Eric Cantona about him. I know he's Tunisian, not French, but he's got that sort of, 1 minute he can do something magical, the next minute he can do something. You're like, why have you done that? I'm not comparing to Eric Cantona, of course. I mean, I'm just saying that he's
Yeah.
got those two sides to him of the genius and the enfant terrible. But I love him. I'm not going to lie to you. I think he's a class player. I think when push comes to shove, he's a really, really good footballer. I don't want to just bring out all the cliches. He's old beyond his years and he's all this, that, and the other stuff. Let's just put it in the most simple sort of explanation. He's a good midfielder who I think will make your team and even Manchester United's midfield better. I would have loved to have seen Hannibal Mejbri starting more games for United. I think he started the game against Burnley. He did very well. I think he got 45 minutes against Galatasaray and it hasn't really got back into the team since then. He was subbed at half time. Christian Eriksen came on, I believe. My memory's a little bit hazy, but we still lost the game, but Eriksen played well. And Mejbri's not been one that the manager's turned to. And I think it might be because there's a little bit of pressure on the manager. He might have looked at him and thought, he's not someone I can risk hanging my hat on if I'm under, do you know what I mean? If I'm under a bit of pressure, he's a player that, yes, he might get me that winning goal or he might get sent off. I'm not in a position where I can start taking these risks. And it's a shame because I think it's a risk worth taking, especially with the issues we've had at Manchester United. Now, I know that Everton aren't just, giving out appearances willy-nilly to anyone who wants them, but I think he could come into your midfield and do a really good job. One of the favourite moments from Hannibal Mejbri was at Anfield. We played there under Ralph Rangnick. Horrible night. I can't even remember. I think do you know what? It's that bad. I've forgotten the actual score. It was either 4 or 5-0. We were just getting battered. It was when everyone had sort of given up, basically. We were 6th or 7th in the league at the time. We were out of the Champions League. We weren't going to get into the Champions League next season. Ralph Rangnick was leaving in a month. And the players are not down-tooled, but the down-tools as such, but more or less. He comes on with 5 minutes to go and just starts kicking everyone. Just runs around and just starts booting everyone. He's just like, listen, you know what? The game's lost. I don't care. And he's flying into tackles. He's flying into challenges. I think it was James Milner who was at Liverpool at the time. Went berserk, like lost his went for him and then went to the ref like, you've got to have a word with this kid because he's just running around booting everyone. And in the end, I think from what I heard, Ralph Rangnick wasn't impressed because he was a bit annoyed that he'd basically come on, ignored his instructions, whatever he was told to do, wasn't told to come on and kick everyone and just done that. But as a fan, It's what I'd have done. You're losing the game at Anfield. You're 4 or 5 nil down. You've got 5 minutes. Sack it. I'm just going to start booting everyone, and that's what he did. So all that aside, he's a real quality player. I think like I said, as soon as he's international, he's always stood out. He's always been a player that has been one to watch. The question is just about his temperament, and I think Dyche might have to be a little bit clever with him. You might have to be careful how he handles him because he's a player that will take on responsibility. If you say to him, you go in that midfield and I want you to get hold of the ball and I want you to do things with it, he'll have a bit of that. But if he's getting kicked or if he's not happy with the referee or whatever, he can flip. He can have that side to him. And if Dyche sort of falls out with him or gets angry at that straight away, then it's not going to be a very good working relationship, especially if it's going to be a loan. So I think that Dyche has got to just sort of handle him carefully. But if he handles him the right way, what a player. I absolutely love him. I really do.
Funnily enough, when it was linked yesterday, I put in the group chat we've got, I was like, I don't know much about him. I said, but I watched one game. He came on and just kicked everyone. And it was Liverpool. As soon as you said it, I was like, to the Liverpool game, because I remember him being like, it was like, was it his debut or something like that?
It was one of his first games. It might have been his debut. I can't remember. I think it was actually. I'm not sure, but I should know actually because, like I say, I'm a big fan of his. But yeah, he just literally it was just 5 minutes just running around like a lunatic, kicking everyone. And like I think in the end, I think Milner went to the ref, and the refs had a word with him. And I think maybe one or two of United players might have just said to him, "Yeah, chill out a bit," but it didn't work because he just carried on. He did one that everyone went mad at, and then a minute later he just did another one. Which, as a fan, when you've lost the game's lost, why not?
Yeah, I was watching it. I was like, if he carries on, he might get sent off in the 5 minute cameo at this rate.
That's what he's like, though. He's got that in him, and I think that with a player like that, you only get away with it if you're very, very talented. If you're bang average, if you're just a good midfielder or a good player, a good attacker, a defender, whatever, but you get sent off or you get booked a lot or you can get some trouble, no one's going to stomach it. The only reason he's still at United, the only reason we've just triggered, I think, a 1 year extension deal for him is because he's so good. He's such a good player, and I guarantee Ten Hag knows that because he picked him in the Premier League this season. He's picked him in the Champions League, and I know he's sort of fallen out of favour recently, but we've got a lot of midfielders as well. And Kobbie Mainoo is basically leapfrogged everyone because he's just. I think Kobbie Mainoo is like Hannibal, but without the temperament issues. He's a talented midfielder, different type of player, but a talented midfielder who can fit straight in, and he's not going to give you a headache. Whereas Hannibal Mejbri, he can play very well, but he might be one of those players that might be a game where he loses it a little bit. And I think going back to the point I made about the Galatasaray game I think it was a Galatasaray game. Forgive me if I'm getting it wrong, but I think it was where it was. I might get confused. I know he played. I think it was either the Newcastle game or the Galatasaray game. One of the two. It might be both. Where there was like he'd been booked, and I think it was like he's been booked. We can't risk him because if we risk him with the way he is, he's not that type of player. When he's had a yellow, you can say, "Look, you've had a yellow. Calm yourself." He won't. So that's what you've got to be mindful of. Now, don't forget as well. He's 20 years old. He's a kid. He can mature, but you tend to sort of when you see an 18-year-old who has that in him, like Rooney did. We both know Wayne Rooney when he's a kid, he had that in him, didn't he? And he mellowed a little bit as he got older, but it never fully went away. If you remember some of the red cards he used to get later on in his career, it's not like that sort of devil inside him ever fully went. And I don't think you can get rid of it fully because I think when you do, you lose something to the player. I think they have that fire, they have that sort of that little edge that makes them what they are. And I think Hannibal's a bit like that. You've just got to try and steer him in the right way. And I'm hoping, from a United point of view, he goes to Everton, smashes it. I want him to do really well for you guys because I want Ten Hag to look at him and go, there's a player I can rely on. Because I think if he plays to his full potential at Everton, we'll have him back in the summer and he'll be playing for Manchester United next season.
You mentioned a different type of midfielder. What type of midfielder is Hannibal then? Is he a deeper one, or is he slightly more, just slightly more attacking minded?
I think when we've used him when he's played in the Premier League this season, he's almost been as part of a six at times as a sort of double pivot. That's arguably not his best role. I'm not sure he's got the discipline for that because to be in that position, sort of sat in front of the defence, you have to have that sort of discipline not to go chasing after the ball at times. Remember where you've got to, where you've got to come back to, where you've got to be at times. Yes, you can go and do a little bit of ball chasing, but it is a very, very disciplined position. It's one of those areas where you have to sort of be able to stay there at times and know when to leave and when not to. And he's someone that does like to get involved a little bit more, likes to go sort of chasing after the ball, likes to carry the ball forward as well. And again, sometimes when you're a six, at times you've got to give it, haven't you? Just to sort of make sure you're not getting too sort of going too far forward at times, but he's not like that. I could almost see him being an 8, but he can. He's a very modern midfielder. He can almost play as a 10 as well, and he's got no qualms. He can pick the ball up and drift out wide. He's one of those sort of real modern midfielders, because I think if he speaks, you see a lot of midfielders now, and it's like in my day, a bit older than you, you were a central midfielder, you were a midfielder. Now you're a DM or you're a cam. I asked my lad the other day, "What's your favourite position?" He said cam. When I was a kid, he was midfield. But I think, in answer to your question, I personally would you be using Hannibal as a bit of an 8. I think he's got that in him. I think if he can get box to box, he can stick a foot in. I know I've spoke about his discipline, but he's not scared of shaking a challenge. You've just got to make sure he doesn't go in too hard too soon. But he can score goals. He can pick passes out. He can carry the ball. So if I was to sort of have him in my team, I'd be using him almost as an 8. I'd say, look, if we've got someone behind him who can stay in front of that defence, and we've got someone in front of him who's just an out-and-out attacking midfielder, he could be almost the connection between those two.
I can see him being very much the Decore role that we have currently. Obviously, Decore's out at the minute, but I think he'd very much do that in front of the two holding, but behind Calvert-Lewin, expected to run up and support when needed. It sounds good. So, what are his strengths then? What are his main strengths?
I think he's very good on the ball, very good, very comfortable on the ball. He's classy. You watch a player and you can just say straight away that it's just second nature to him. His control, his touch, the way he can just pop off a little quick pass, keep it nice and simple when he wants to, then carry the ball. Just very, very, very good on the ball. He's got a decent shot on him. I've seen him score some good goals for the under-18s. Seen him score a good goal against Brighton that I mentioned earlier. So he's not afraid to have a shot when he needs to, and he's got a decent range of passing. I mean, he's got all the attributes, really. He has. I'd say he's not, for me, even though I've spoke about him being able to put a foot in, I don't think he's a defensive type of midfielder. You could try him there if you were short or if you needed that, because he's got that aggression. But I don't think that's his best attribute. I do feel, though, like in terms of getting on the ball, carrying the ball, and picking out passes, that's his best. That's probably the whole sort of range he's got, because I don't think he's only good at passing. He's not like someone like Christian Eriksen, for example. I say Christian Eriksen's strength is passing. He's superb at dictating the tempo of the game. Very good. Can pick out long passes, short passes. Great at that. Hannibal's got a bit of that, but he's also got the ability to carry the ball. He's also got that ability as well to have a dig with his shot as well. So he has got several sort of feathers in his cap. And I think, he's just a very good all-round, probably an all-round attack-minded midfielder, if I'm being brutally honest. I know I said he's an 8, but I think he's always going to be that sort of, he's someone you probably look at and think his main aim on that pitch is to try and get down the business end of the pitch and get some goals.
So obviously the temperament you mentioned is sort of can be his weakness. Are there any others to watch out for as well as maybe his temperament?
No, I think he's at a crossroads now for me, Hannibal. He's got to start listening to people. He's got to start listening to his managers, his coaches, his teammates, because you can see sometimes he's in his own little thing. He's doing his own little thing. He's not maybe taking on board what he should be. And that can be okay when you're 17, 18, when you're 19, 20 now, I think. And it's this decision time for the manager. Are you a first team player? You have to listen to him. You have to listen to instructions. You have to take it on board when the referee has a word with you. Like, if the referee says to come here, what word are you? Calm yourself. Don't just ignore that like he has done in the past and just carry on running around like a lunatic. Take that on board and think, okay, do you know what? I've been given a verbal here. and I've seen his teammates have words with him, and he needs a bit of that. I wouldn't have minded seeing someone like Casemiro playing alongside him. Someone like that who could just, because you've got Bruno, but Bruno can be absolute lunatic himself. But someone who's got that experience and is a little bit more calm, who might be able to have a word with him and say, look, now's the time to get stuck in. Now's not the time to. Just little things, giving him a bit of advice. He's not someone who needs a lot of advice, but I think the advice he's giving, he needs to start listening to it, because that's one area that he may end up finding. He may find himself. You have those players like the who was the kid at QPR? Is it Adol Sarat,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
lad that was just bags of skill, had some great seasons, just probably never reached the levels that he could have done, just for one reason or another. You can have those sort of the Ravel Morrison types. I know he's not a Ravel Morrison
Just
off the
about to
pitch,
say
but
with Al Morrison, yeah.
yeah, just so much talent, but just not listening, not doing the things you need to do. He's at a stage in his career now. If he's not careful, I'm not saying he ends up like Ravel, but he could end up not fulfilling that potential, not having the top elite level career he should have. He should be playing for me at a Champions League level team. Yeah, that's I know Manchester United or everything like that at the moment, but that's where he should be, and that's where his career should take him. Now I want to see that at Manchester United, but if he's not careful, he'll end up maybe kicking around in the Championship or the relegation type situation or whatever, just not reaching that very top because he's let things get the better of him. So he's just got to take on board advice, listen to instructions, because the talent is there. Physically, he's a very strong lad, very quick. He's got everything physically. He's got the ability. He's just got to find that right sort of attitude, temperament wise, and he'll be gold. He really will.
So is the wider United fan base, are they sort of, when you're looking online and you're speaking to people, is that sort of the same universal thought in the fan base where got bags of potential, just maybe needs to maybe go to an Everton, like I know Seville, I think are also linked with him, go to another club for a loan to get game time and then sort of hopefully kick on next season. Is that the sort of universal thought?
I think Kobe Mainoo coming into the team has altered it slightly. I think if you'd have asked me this a couple of months ago, a lot of United fans would have said, get him in the team. Just get him in. We need him. I spoke to a lot of, I can't speak for any other fans other than myself, but I did speak to a lot of fans, obviously, the job I do. And the general feeling, whenever I suggested Hannibal, when we did a preview and I said, I want to see Hannibal starting, overwhelming people are like, yeah, get him in. Why not? And a lot of that is to do with the fact our midfield was struggling. But I think when people looked at it and thought, excuse me, can you have Hannibal and Mainu together? Is that a bit of a risk? Because you've got an 18-year-old who's just finding his feet in Premier League football, and you've got this sort of live wire youngster who can be amazing, but also can be a disaster waiting to happen. Is that a bit too much for a team which, as United were at the time and still are a little bit struggling? So I felt like that shifted a lot of people going, probably not now. Now's not the time, sorry, to put him in the first team because Mainoo's doing so well. Because Mainoo's just been phenomenal since he's come into the team. I think it's like it felt a bit like one or the other, if that makes sense, because they're
Yeah.
so young, because they're so inexperienced. It's like, do you want 2/3 of your midfield to be youngsters who've barely played for Manchester United? Probably not. Not when you're up against it. So I feel that shifted it. But I feel that if Mainoo wasn't about, it might be more people saying, let's start Hannibal. I feel like now people are saying your midfield should be something like Mainoo, Bruno, and Ericsson or Casemiro when he's back, or Mason Mount or whatever when he's fit. Hannibal's sort of been one of those players who people have not forgot about by any stretch of the imagination, but aren't as enthusiastic about as they were a few months ago. But I think if he goes to Everton and does what he can do, I want him to go to Everton, to be honest with you. I'm not just saying this because I'm chatting to you guys, but I want him to get Premier League football. I want him to experience that. I want the manager to be able to see him in the Premier League. It always saddened me a bit that Donny van der Beek loan didn't work out because I know he got injured, didn't he? He missed half the games for your team. And he needed that. He needed a good loan spell, and he didn't get one because he got injured again. And I think with Hannibal, because he's got a year left on his deal, I think if there's a chance that if he didn't go out on loan, he might have that year on his deal, and he might just end up getting 7 games or whatever next season, hardly any, and just leaving at the end of next season. If he goes to Everton and does well in the Premier League, obviously, the manager look at that and go, actually, there's a player here who's only going to get better as well. He's 20 years old. He's only going to get improve. So maybe I could give him a chance, because I think Ericsson has been sort of backed into this corner a little bit because of the results where he's not been given as many chances to the youngsters as he might want to. Because I think historically he's a manager that does give youngsters a chance, and he's given Kobe Mainoo a chance. Garnacho's become a mainstay of the team. We've seen, obviously, Hannibal's had appearances for us. Dan Gore's been on the fringes of the first team as well. So he's not against using youngsters, but I don't think he's probably gone as far as he'd like, because when you're up against it, you tend to turn to experience, don't you? You tend to sort of like, who's my players who've been around here, who've been around a long time, who I can rely on, rather than risking it with younger players. And I get that. I think, it makes a lot of sense as well, because you don't want to throw players into a situation that's going to hinder the career. But I think, like I said, if Hannibal does well, goes to Everton does well, and we start next season on a sort of clean slate. If Eric Ten Hag's still here, hope he will be. And we've got the new sort of part owners, and they say, look, you've got this season is start fresh. He might look at someone like Hannibal and go, okay, I can give this kid a chance.
So, what do you think he would? I don't know how much of our games you've caught this season, other than obviously when we played yous. What do you think he can add to us then as a football team? His style, what does he bring to us?
I think he brings a lot to Everton. I think Everton have done well, because obviously the points deduction, you almost erase that. I think after the United game, you went on the run, didn't you? Where you
Yeah.
just, what was it, 4 wins or whatever it was, just to sort of, as almost a proof of point. Like, we'll say that deduction, and we'll throw it back at you. So I think, obviously Everton are capable of getting results, capable of putting in performances. But I think he's one of those players that he can. I know this sounds a lot for a 20-year-old. I know people watching this going, Jay, you're getting carried away. But he can almost bring out the best in those around him, because he's so confident, because he's got that swagger, because he's got one of those, give me the ball, I want to get on the ball, I want to run with the ball, I want to start playing 1-2s, I want to bring in other players. It can get you going a little bit, it gets the crowd going, and it can get other players going where they're like, I saw it when he came on against Brighton. We're chasing the game. This is this kid who's come on, and he's all like taking over. He's like, give me that ball, and I'm going to get this goal, and I'm going to do this. And everyone was loving it. The crowd were loving it. His teammates were on board with it. They were like, you could see, they were like, there was, okay, it's happening for this kid. This kid's on it. Like, let's try and give him the ball. Let's get involved. And I think he could do that. I think he can. He can be one of those players who carries the ball forward, which is something I know you've got players that can do that. I just feel at times that might be something you're lacking a little bit. I'm not seeing as much of Everton, obviously, as you have, so forgive me if I'm getting that completely wrong. Just at times when I've watched Everton, I've felt, I know you've got some players who can run with the ball, Dwight McNeil or whatever, but I do feel like, especially in the centre of the park, you can always do with that little bit extra, and I think he'll bring that for you. And I think he's an exciting player. I would say, though, to you as a fan, bro, it's not easy being patient with players, especially when they're on loan, but he might need a little bit of that. He's going to a new club. He's only a kid. It might take him a few games, and you might see first couple of games, you might be going, what was Jay on about? This kid's a nightmare. He's all over the gaff. But I think once he gets settled, I think you stick with him, you'll get the best out of him, because what you don't want him to do, I think it wouldn't serve you and it wouldn't serve him well, is if he came to Everton and he tried to play it safe. If he tried to be something different because, he has a game where it's not worked out for him, right, that's it now, I'm just going to start playing 5-yard passes and not taking anyone on and not trying anything and just sort of, being a sort of fade in the background. That's no good to him, and it won't do you any favours either. You want him to be that player that he can be. So yeah, I think if he has a ropey one or two games when he starts, I wouldn't worry about it. Just once he gets into his stride, he'll be a good player for you. He really will. And I think it might do him well as well, having a manager like Sean Dyche. I think if Sean Dyche sort of speaks to him and says, look, this is the cards on the table. This is what I'm about. I'm not going to take any messing. I brought you here for a reason. Get on with it. And let's make a success of it. I think that could stand him in good stead.
It sounds promising. Like I said, I think he'll come in that. I think that the Corey role is sort of built from him, from what you're saying. So I think he'll have while the Corey's out, he'll obviously will probably play. But once he's back, I think he'll be more. You bring him on in the last. I mean, Sean Dyche is tough with subs, so he'll probably get like the last 20 because he's really tough with making subs till late. But he'll allow him that easiness of he doesn't have to come in and straight away be the main star. There's no pressure on him if it takes him that little bit longer to sink in, which is best for him.
Yeah, that's what you want, because you don't want him coming in and to be honest, he's someone who looks like he excuse me, he looks like pressure would never really bother him. But you don't know what it's like. You go into a big club, obviously. You go in there, there's expectation there. If it's not going your way in the first couple of games, you might feel a little bit on you. But I think, like I said, I think if you stick with him, you'll have a very good player. And it might do him well as well, the fact that he's not necessarily coming in and it's like, right, you are in this first team now and it's all on you. If you're going, look, you're coming in, we want you to do a job, but some games you might start, others you might not. You've got to work your way into the team. That might be beneficial for everyone, because he might think, right, okay, I know he'll think he deserves to be in a team, but if you're saying to him, look, you got to earn it, you got to show us, then that could be just a tonic.
So obviously you mentioned the Brighton game a couple of times. Would you say that's his highlight so far in his United career, that Brighton game?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you then. I thought I think it was a Burnley game. I thought was for me was probably a better rounded performance. The Brighton game was more or less a cameo, so it's a bit difficult to say. Oh, that was a what you call a great performance because he was only on. I can't remember. It was like 15 minutes or whatever. So whilst it was a very good 15 minutes and he got a goal, I think it'd be a bit of a stretch to say that was sort of that amazing that that's his highlight of his career because I know he's not played many first team games and that was I think probably his only first team goal. So there is that. But I felt for me the Burnley game sorry was the one where I'm pretty sure he played the full game for that one. And United, who we've been a bit erratic, as you've probably seen this season, especially away from home, but to go to Burnley, get that win, was massive for us. And I remember, I'm pretty sure after the game, I spoke about Hannibal and how he'd impressed me. And he'd almost in that game, at times he'd been almost like a 10. He'd been right up near Rasmus Højlund. At times he dropped deep. You'd seen the full range of what he's about. So yeah, it was a real solid performance for him. And I'm a bit disappointed because for me, that felt like the beginning of something for him. I think he played the full 90. I thought this could be it now. And then I think it might be both games or it might be one or the other, but I think Galatasaray and Newcastle in the Carabao and the Champions League. Forgive me, my memory's a bit. I always get games mixed up. There was a game where he got subbed at half time and he never really got going for him again since then. Obviously, it's not like his career's over. He's only 20, but that felt like Erik ten Hag had sort of gone. And plus, Christian Eriksen was back then. He was coming back, and I think the combination of that was one where you went, I can't really rely on this kid, and I've got the guy that I always rely on because Christian Eriksen plays a lot of football under Erik ten Hag. So that was almost, and then you've got Kobbie Mainoo coming through. So you've got like the triple whammy of questioning whether this kid is quite where you want him to be. Kobbie Mainoo coming through, who's ready, and he came back from injury. I think had he not been injured at the beginning of the season, he would have played at the beginning of the season. And then Christian Eriksen coming back from injury as well. And also throw into the mix the fact that United are obviously desperate for points where the manager's not willing to take too many risks. It just felt like the perfect storm for him to not play as much football. And it's a shame because, like I say, if I had my way, he'd be starting every game.
Okay, no worries. My final one for you is, do you think it's a good move for Hannibal and Everton? And is there anything else you want to add to maybe say about him before we finish?
No, I think it's a very good move for both. I hope he goes to you guys and not Sevilla. If he goes to Sevilla, Sevilla, a great club. Not got no problem with him playing the Liga. I always think that sometimes managers look at a player on loan in Liga and think that doesn't influence my decision because it's not the Premier League in terms of whether they're ready to come back into this team or whether they're good enough for this team. I think when you go to a Premier League team and you do well, it's more obvious. It's more there in front of your face. Okay, he's playing in the Premier League week in, week out. He's playing well. So I'm hoping that Erik ten Hag will take heed of what Hannibal Mejbri does. And if he does anything like the other players that have gone out, not on loan, but have left Manchester United this season going to Premier League teams, you look at Mengi at Luton, you look at Anthony Elanga at Forest. These are players that either couldn't get in United's team or didn't look like they were at the levels we wanted them to be and have shone straight away when they've gone to some of the clubs, to the point now where I'm talking United fans who are going, why did we let Mengi go at Luton and why did we get rid of Anthony Elanga? Now, I think there was different reasons for both of those transfers, but if he can do something like that and he's on loan, then great stuff. We'll get him back in the summer and hopefully he can shine.
Yeah, I guess it's easier as well to compare stats to your own team because they're facing same competition, same league sort of thing, same style. So yeah. All right, brilliant. Well, thank you for joining me, Jay. That's been a pleasure, and it's been nice to learn a little bit more about him. Like I said, coming into it, all I knew him as was a bit of a hothead, a lot of aggression, which will get the crowd up and pumping anyway. But from what you've said, he's got a lot more to that than just his aggression. So thank you for coming on and joining me.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, I look forward to seeing how he gets on. I'll be checking out you guys to get some updates on his performances. I really will.
No problem. Don't forget, guys, you can like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and comment your thoughts down below. You can also check Jay out at the Stretford Paddock as well. Their link will be in the description, and I'll see you guys soon.